Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Life is uncertain. It's okay to feel stressed, anxious, worried, or frustrated. CalHope can help. Access CalHope's free and secure mental health resources. Call 833-317-4673 or live chat at calhope.org.
Hi, it's Patrick O'Driscoll here. You might know me as Pods. I'd like to welcome you to the Adelaide Hills Farmcast. It's the podcast we produce for the love of farming right throughout the Adelaide Hills region. And now, I'll hand over to Adelaide Hills Farm Services' very own Belle Baker. Over to you, Belle.
Hi there, welcome to this month's Adelaide Hills Farmcast, the podcast that gives you a handy list of things you could be doing on your small acreage or lifestyle property this month. Like the security of your ag tech equipment. Did you see the recent article from the ABC Rural about a white hat hacker who successfully hacked into some John Deere equipment? He was trying to prove a point at the world's largest hacker conference. There was absolutely no harm done. In fact, I'd say it's done some really good things in raising the awareness of vulnerabilities in ag tech equipment. So we got in contact with Richard Pascoe, the Adelaide tech guy, and Pods chatted to him about our equipment and what we can do to reduce the risk of anyone hacking into our GPS systems and any other equipment we use, including our computers. And in response to some recent discussions with clients, Jackson Adams, our senior workman, and I have a chat about fence posts, the different types available, different types of preservatives, and what you can expect as far as size and variations and colours. If this is the first time you're listening to the Adelaide Hills Farmcast, we've divided our farm calendar into different sections or agricultural enterprises, and as not everything necessarily needs action every month, I do take liberties with this, keeping the information relevant and practical. If there's any particular information you're looking for, please let me know. I'm always keen to help and welcome your feedback. Buckle up, let's get started. We're heading into the sheep selling season, so if you're keen to look at new genetics or expand your flock, it's a good time to do your homework. You can get a lot of good information directly from breeders at the Royal Adelaide Show, which starts on the 3rd of September, and watching the sheep judging can help you decide if there's any particular bloodlines you'd like to follow. The Dorper sheep judging takes place from 1 p.m. on Sunday the 4th of September, so that could be a good place to start. If Dorpers are your thing, and for a lot of people in the Adelaide Hills they are, then I suggest you go to the Dorper Society of Australia website to find Dorper breeders near you and the dates of their sales. I'll put the link in the show notes for you. Of course, all that goes the same for cattle as well, although the cattle selling or bull selling season tends to be in the spring. As we come out of winter, it's also a good time to start thinking about your blowfly control plan. And yes, Dorpers can become fly blown. This isn't just a thing for wool breeds or non-shedding sheep. Your plan should be a combination of shearing, crutching, worm control and jetting. We often see a handful of sheep on small properties that are there just to keep the grass down. It's seen as an easy win, but sadly there's rarely any regard for the ongoing health of the sheep. And we get it, the infrastructure and management costs of looking after sheep well can be costly. This is why we suggest working in with your neighbours, sharing resources and perhaps getting your animal husbandry activities done collectively. It's worth doing a little bit of planning, and once you're in a system, it's much easier to manage. Now for the bad news. We're smack bang in the middle of fox mating season, and come late spring, there will be a lot of more hungry mouths looking for an easy meal. So as I always say, get prepared. Check your chicken coops, make sure there are no weaknesses that a hungry fox will take advantage of, or consider investing in an alpaca to help protect your sheep during lambing. This really works, however you must introduce the alpaca to the flock well before lambing, as they then have an opportunity to bond and will then display those protective instincts that you're looking for. I found a couple of fact sheets on foxes and I'll put them in the show notes. It's worthwhile understanding a little more about how they behave so that you can best protect your chooks and baby lambs. This is the ideal time to begin to spray graze program to control your Salvation Jane, or as it's known, Patterson's curse. Pods has been out at Mount Pleasant doing just that, spraying a property with a reduced rate of herbicide that would kill off Salvation Jane, just enough to make it palatable to the cattle. It's worth noting that managing Salvation Jane isn't something you do for just 1 year. It will take a number of years to reduce the seedbed and completely rid your pastures of this noxious weed. If you have any of this quite distinctive purple flowering plant on your property, have a read of my blog post that I wrote last year, link in the show notes of course, and consider making a start on eradicating it from your property. In other news, the Hills Small Acreage Field Day will be held at the Echunga Recreation Grounds on the 24th and 25th of September. It's the first field day event in South Australia that focuses on small acreage properties and will showcase the latest equipment, services and products that will actually match the scale of your lifestyle property. We reckon they're onto something. Now, whilst we intend to go and have a look around, and we might even have our little recorder there and do something for the podcast, we'll probably be there on the Saturday morning. Adelaide Hills Farm Services definitely won't be exhibiting this year because, as many of you would know, Pods is a bit of a footy nut, and this year the event falls on the AFL Grand Final weekend. That counts ours out, but from what we hear, there are a lot of exhibitors signed up, and it's definitely an event we'll look at supporting in future years. So hopefully that will give you a few ideas of what you could be thinking about and planning to do on your property in the coming months. I'll be back next month with more timely jobs to add to your to-do list. And don't forget, the show notes for this episode can be found on our website, AdelaideHillsFarmServices.com.au. This month, Pod stepped out of his comfort zone to talk to Richard Pascoe, the Adelaide tech guy, about how to protect your ag tech software and equipment from potential cyber attacks. I'm quite impressed with how Pod's handled this interview, and it just goes to show you can teach old farmers new tricks. That was Pods talking with Richard Pascoe, the Adelaide tech guy. Next, I have a chat with our senior workman, Jacko. We've recently finished an eye-catching fence on Wellington Road at Highland Valley, consisting of a creosote rail on top and stiff stay horse mesh. Creosote is a particularly difficult product to work with in terms of inhaling fumes and sunburn risk to exposed skin, and let's be honest, the complete disintegration of clothing that comes in contact with it. We agree the finished product looks stylish, however there are other ways to get to that end result. So Jacko and I have a look at the alternatives and discuss some of the natural variations in wooden posts. Thanks for listening to the Adelaide Hills Farmcast. We hope you've enjoyed this month's episode and jotted down a few things for your to-do list. You can leave comments and send questions on the show notes page for this episode, which is on our website, AdelaideHillsFarmServices.com.au. Just click on the Farmcast tab and look for the September episode. See you next time.
G'day ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Today with myself on site I have the Adelaide tech guy Richard Pascoe, as heard on 5AA on a Saturday afternoon. Good morning to you, Richard.
Thank you for having me up to your magnificent property.
You're most welcome, Richard.
And before we start, thanks for cleaning the vehicle. That's great.
You are most welcome. That's a very clean vehicle by Hill standard in mid to late winter, so the pleasure's all yours. Richard, thank you very much for making the effort to come up to the hills. Today, Belle and myself thought it was apt that we speak about internet-connected devices, farm software and the like. We have recently heard about John Deere having an issue with their software security. You're very familiar with that, I believe. Can you run not only Belle and myself through that, but also our listeners?
So let's not panic about that. It's a good news story first. John Deere, very enclosed company. So what happens is that, if we've got a John Deere tractor, that we can't take it down to Fred the repairer down the road unless he's a John Deere authorised dealer. So it's a very enclosed thing on there. Now, this vulnerability happened, or this was accessed at the Hackers Conference in Las Vegas. That is a famous thing that happens every year, and they normally pick on something. So this year it was John Deere tractor. So what do? They installed a video game on there. So they broke into the system, which is what these guys are paid to do, just to show the vulnerability. Now, John Deere will patch all of that to make sure that doesn't happen. But I think it's a lesson for all of us to go along and say, any internet connected device we've got, any piece of software we've got, it's got to be as solid as a rock, and we've got to keep the outside influences away from it.
Okay, so from there, and I guess our podcast does target the lifestyle farmers within the hills. What advice can you give them, given that a lot of our listeners won't have that larger John Deere machinery that comes with the technology, but there is also other smaller items of software and technology that some will be using on their properties.
So we've got tractors and things that connect to GPS software, and it's when we install, anytime we ever get anything that connects to the internet, or we're going to set something up from scratch, we've got to take a good hard look and do it the right way. You know, we've got to make sure that if we've got default username and password on there, that we change all of that when we set it up. So, you know, we go Belle's Tractor with a good password on there, not admin, because too many people go, you know what, I'm stuck out in this beautiful environment, I've driven up for the weekend, it's magnificent out here, nobody's ever going to want to look at what I'm doing on the internet or with my internet connected devices. That is false, because internet connected devices means that it can connect to other properties as well. So we've got to look at all these sort of things. So let's lock it down to us. Let's make sure that we check our username, our password, we've set it up correctly. And then the thing to do is go along and say, do we need to make sure it's updated all the time? If there is a facility to update any piece of software, everybody should be taking advantage of that. But the thing I always get from people is, you know, Richard, it's worked for the last 15 years. Why would I bother ever doing anything like that? That's why we've moved on in life. You know, when we look at our computers at the moment, we've got Windows 11, which is a great operating system, Windows 10, but the others are all getting a bit long in the tooth now. And I deal with people who sometimes have been very long in the tooth and go, you know, I paid good money for that. 15 years ago, I paid $4,000 for it, and I go, you know what? You've got your dollar's worth out of it now. It's time to put your hand in your pocket and update. Because modern day security is all about setting up the correct way and making sure it's updated constantly to keep the villains out.
Okay, that's the bottom line in the last sentence you've just used. Update your software constantly to keep the villains out, the bad guys out. Now, I've got a couple of admissions to make. Number one, and
this is like true confessions.
This is like true confessions, and I'm not strong on IT and software, but I am strong with regards believing that what I'm not good at, I get someone in, or get someone to help me that can assist that, and I'm very lucky. Belle, my partner, is outstanding with
she does a
marketing
magnificent job, let's say that.
She does do that. So behind us here we have the spraying ute.
Yep.
And we have the Case Tractor. Now that's the other admission I've got to make. I am a John Deere fan, but I've got the Case Tractor, so go and work that out. We talk about the John Deere technology. I've got a Case Tractor, so guilty, but that's okay.
But let's, you know, the news articles ran John Deere down a bit. I don't think there's any reason to run them down.
Not at all.
I think they're a great company. And remember, that was just somebody going along, I can do this.
Because that can happen to Ford New Holland, it could happen to Case, it could happen to AGCO, whoever else it would be.
Yeah.
Doesn't isolate to one particular colour of tractor. But in both implements here, we've got the FM 750 GPS, which we use out in the field. Now, I'm thinking that I should update passwords, usernames on that. I've got to admit, I wouldn't know how to go about that. I'm lucky enough to draw on Belle, who has great IT experience. I'll say, Belle, we probably should spend the 5 or 10 minutes to just change up our username and our password.
You should, and you know, it's about going to the website of the manufacturer for it, and they will go along and say if there's an update to be done, or if there's a problem to be done. All the good ones do that. And that's what we want to see. Is there something sitting there that might assist us? You know, a lot of times it's not just security; it's a better feature that they might be. You know, we might be accurate within, let's say, 10 feet, but now with a software update, might be accurate within a foot.
And that's a good reminder. With my particular FM 750s, they're manufactured by Trimble, which is a very well-known company also. So I should be looking for any recent updates that Trimble may have released for that range of software.
And I always say, you know, people will go along and, you know, you get your tractor serviced, you get your car serviced, and part of that is, you know, John Deere will go along and say, you know what, to keep it going another couple of years, you need to replace the who's and what's it that was on there. Because, I can't give you a tractor part, but that's good. IT services will come along and say, you know what, this needs to be done. So it's, to make sure that everything runs efficiently and securely.
Absolutely. Getting back to the John Deere, and I'm certainly not here to pick on John Deere, but we have friends who farm in the upper southeast, and I know for a fact they run all John Deere tractors, boom sprays, and I think they became victim to this hacking, for want of a better word, and their John Deere Green Star system was out of action for a period of time, a large broadacre cropping operation, running air seeders, running boom sprays, and hence with the GPS or the Green Star system being out of action for a period of time, they then had to revert back to what our parents used to do on the farm and drive freehand. And to be brutally honest, and no criticism of the younger generation, they are employing younger people at $30, $35 an hour who are very familiar with being able to operate a GPS system like John Deere Green Star, and they were quite competent in operating tractors to go in straight lines up and down the paddock. For then that Green Star system to no longer be operational for a period of time and then have to drive freehand, our man said that his staff really struggled, and then that puts I know it's an isolated incident of one farmer, but that would have happened over numerous
and not
farms.
just here, around the world.
Correct.
Because John Deere's so famous.
And it is too. And then that puts a question mark on our food security, not to put a too fine a word on it.
And going forward in the next few years, I mean, we're seeing things where England just suffered for some of the couple of the major water supplies over there. They were hacked and shut off and held to ransom. So we're going to see it more and more where we've got, like not just things like that, but, if they can start affecting the food supply in some nations, it's a thing where we've all got to be aware of it. So let's make sure that we do everything correctly. We understand we've got a bit of maintenance on there. It's like if you've got cattle and you're keeping them in a closed paddock, why are you leaving the gate open at night so they can wander off? Shut the gate.
Analogy. Okay, there we have it. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or in summary there, Richard?
No, I think we've covered everything for it's make sure everything's locked down, set devices up correctly, check for updates, and you should be fine. And don't let third parties interfere. So we've got kids going out and doing things. We want them to make sure that they're doing the correct thing while they're out there, not hooking up an Android phone while they're out there to, maybe create vulnerabilities in the network.
Okay, very good. Thank you again for your time up here this morning,
Pleasure.
Richard. Yeah, we're very happy to have you, and all the very best. And as I said earlier on, if anyone wants to listen to Richard on 5AA on a Saturday afternoon, you will hear his dulcet tones.
Thank you for the dulcet tones gag. So yes.
Good man. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Jacko, today we're talking fence posts. We've been quite busy doing a variety of fences lately. The main posts that we use are this wood shield post over here, and that is a machined product, isn't it, with recycled plastic? So
yeah,
it's actually organic.
Like an organic product for those producers that are organically certified, I suppose, and a lot more uniform than your natural products that we use here.
Yeah,
as well.
And it's a wonderful product for you guys to use. You enjoy using it?
Absolutely, yeah.
And then we've got the creosote product here, which is a more natural product.
Yep.
Natural wood product, with the variation in sizes. It comes in, what's the sort of variation for an inline post? What size do we talk?
We use, 100 mil to 125 mil.
For an inline post?
Yeah,
and
that's
for
correct.
A strainer post?
150 to 200
right,
is generally what we use.
And that is a range, isn't it? That is a
that's
range
right.
in size. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we know, we've looked at it and we've measured it all, that it really does have those level of ranges, and we can see it from one end of the post to the other. There's often a bow, and that's just something we need to work with our fencing. And the other fence, the post type that we use is the CCA, and that is the one we prefer to use, isn't it?
100%, yeah. Yeah. So sort of same as your Creo here, but just a alternative form of treatment to preserve the natural product.
Yeah. And look, we have talked to you guys. You and AJ, you've been at the coalfire, talking about how bad creosote is to work with, and especially at the moment where it's so fresh out of the warehouses, out of the manufacturers.
Yeah, that's right. I think, all things COVID and supply, demand, all those things are meaning that the bundles of posts that are coming out are pretty fresh.
Yep.
Coming off the press, and so
they're almost wet, aren't they?
Yeah, they're almost wet to the point when we're knocking them in with the percussion knocker, that creosote, which is like an arsenic-based compound, I suppose, is like sort of spewing out the top.
Gross. And it gets all over your clothes.
Over your clothes. I mean, we wear these gloves and all these protective clothing, but there's just no sort of getting away from it. It just soaks through everything.
And look, it really is. It's a product that at Adelaide Hills Farm Services we're looking to get away from. South Australia is really one, and particularly the Adelaide Hills, it's really one of the last bastions using creosote. We think that what are the reasons people use creosote, really?
Well, I think it's mainly to do with is it cribbing?
Yep.
Where horses will chew the product, and so...
Well, they chew the CCA, is that right? Not the...
Well, they want to chew the posts, and, say if we've got a post and rail fence, they want to chew that if they get bored, and I think there's other things like teeth sucking or something like that.
Yeah, and they don't tend to do that with the creosote?
No, that's right. So that's got a compound in there which is supposedly supposed to help with that, sort of prevent them going up and chewing it and degrading the product.
So what's the option for horse properties?
Well, as we were talking the other day, I reckon there might be an opportunity to use something like your CCA post and then come back through and paint it with the Studex, which is like...
So that's not a creosote-based paint, is it? That is a black paint with a product in it
that prevents the chewing and the cribbing. And, that's right. So,
and we could do that with an air gun, so it can actually be a pretty quick process.
100%.
And it's a lot less toxic for the environment. It's got to be less toxic for your horses.
Yeah.
It's certainly a product that we would rather be doing that for our staff. We just feel it's really important to look after our employees and the environment as a whole. So we think that's probably a really good option.
Yeah, I think across the board it's got benefits for all involved.
One other thing we need to be mindful of when we're looking at these posts, when we get them from the reseller and we get them on site and we go to open them up, they tend to hide some of the really wonkier ones on the inside.
Yeah, that's right. So look at it, this bundle here, it looks like a pretty...
It's hard to tell, isn't it?
Pretty uniform, straight, bundle of posts. But what we find is when you open them up, they're generally hiding a fair few, 4 to 5, something like that, on the inside that are, pretty average and hard to work with.
Yeah, so Pods, do you want to do your best opening up work? And we'll have a look at, see if we can find some.
Nice cutting, Pods.
Well done, Pods.
Well, that one there is
That's a fairly wonky one.
Pretty good example of a bit of a bend in it. Talking about trying to get them, set straight in line and generally as even as we can, level with the spirit level.
Yeah.
You can see the whoop. So what would that be? Sort of 600 mil off the ground as it goes up there. It sort of has that fair old bend in it.
And when you guys are lining your posts up, you do your best you can to make them look as even as possible. But there are, wood is a natural product. We've got to work with what we've got.
Yeah, that's right.
Are there any other in here that, because there were some smaller ones. The other thing, of course, is the irregular colour. They're not all a regular dark colour, and that's just the way they
Well, that's
they
right.
come.
When we were talking to the manufacturer, I suppose you'd call them, is that, being a natural product, there's heavier, denser timber within the length of the post. And so during the treatment process, the uptake of the chemical is not as quite,
there's an ugly
quite
one.
uniform.
That's a really ugly post. Look at that one.
So that's got a sort of a double bend in it, sort of whoops out about 500 mil up off the ground, and then getting up to the top of the post there, it sort of comes back again. So that's
and
what
we've got
AJ...
to use them, unless they, when we knock them in, they're no good. But we try and put those sort of down the fence, sort of away from an area that is used a lot, so you don't it doesn't annoy you as such.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a natural product. That's what we're working with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you try your hardest, but you can only do so much with, a natural product, as you say.
That's right. And you just can't pick that from the outside of the
No, that's right. And like, to be honest, this is actually quite a nice bundle. It's not, usually you open them up and it's just like, wow, what are we going to do with that?
Yeah, yeah.
Here's another example of the variation on a creosote product. We use these boards often in the equine setting where building new fences for horses because it's a safe product to use with horses. But as you can see here, the variation throughout this board is quite prevalent, and we sort of followed up with the manufacturer on behalf of one of our clients recently just to get a bit of an idea about what we're dealing with here, and they simply said that none of their product leaves the warehouse that hasn't been treated to specifications. And so this is just what we're dealing with. And if you're not happy with the look of this creosote product as is, then maybe you could look into an alternative such as the CCA that's treated with the Stud-X product to get a more uniform look.
So we're going to start, as a company, we're going to start discouraging people from using creosote. And we think there's some really good alternatives, whether it's the CCA posts, and if they need to be painted with the Stud-X, or the wood shield post for a more machined uniform look.
Yeah,
because that's the other thing with the creosote, isn't it? We're looking at the post in front of us. This one here, this was a bundle a minute ago, and it was fairly uniform in colour, not entirely though. But these other ones here, the creosote doesn't cover them uniformly, does it?
No, that's right. Because it is a natural product, the uptake of the chemical is not uniform from start to finish.
Yeah.
And the product itself is not uniform. You've got that variation to start with, and knots and bends and twists all throughout. And
so if you're looking for a fence, maybe it's your front entrance, etc., and you want it to be a uniform colour, maybe the wood shield is an option, or maybe a machined product that is painted black.
Yeah.
Or white, or whatever colour uniform you want. So thank you, Jacko. Thank you for taking a moment out. I know it's going to cost me in coffee and beer, but I think it's a really important point. I think the time for creosote is over, and there's some really good alternatives.
There are options.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Adelaide Hills Farmcast. Belle and I hope you found it helpful. You can leave comments and send questions on the show notes page for this episode, which is on our website, adelaidehillsfarmservices.com.au. Just click on Farmcast and look for the September episode.
Life is uncertain. It's okay to feel stressed, anxious, worried, or frustrated. It's normal. With CalHope's free and secure mental health resources, it's easy to get the help you and your loved ones need when you need it the most. Call our warm line at 833-317-4673 or live chat at calhope.org today.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.